Hello, everyone. Oh, recording in progress. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the new world of new business. I can't believe we are so far. Well, it feels like we're quite far into 2022, and this is the first webinar that I'm doing. So we do have a few firsts today, because as well as being live here with hopefully quite a few of you who are signing in via the Zoom, we also, for the first time ever, are going live on LinkedIn. So you may well be viewing us on LinkedIn. So if that's where you're seeing us, hello and welcome. So if you are joining us for the first time, it will be the first time that you've met me and any of our guests. My name is Katie Street. I am not only your host for the webinar today, but also the founder of Street Agency, where we help essentially marketing, digital, creative agencies attract and win new business. And we're a bit like an agency for agencies. And also the co-founder of Lambert.io, which is the agency new business academy, gives you all the tools, tactics, skills, and training that you need to do it for yourselves. So hopefully I'm quite well versed at all of the things we're going to be talking about today, but I have some amazing guests with me. Before I introduce them, and some of them need no introducing, because I mean, he's already told you where he's from, so we're sorted with Andy. But just a very quick bit of housekeeping. Please do ask any questions using the little Q&A down the bottom. Yes, it is down there. Oh, everything's moved on Zoom as I've started this year. So yeah, do put any questions in the Q&A, because I can make sure that I put them to our fantastic guests. You will see there is already things happening in the chat. So yeah, hello, hi Rob, you're a regular new. I can't believe we're into our third year of doing this, by the way. Amazing, it's so exciting. So yeah, so please do feel free to say hello to everyone in the chat. But yeah, if you can try and remember to put questions in the Q&A, I will make sure I get to them. So without further ado, let's say hello to our fantastic panelists. So because he's up on my screen at the top, Andy. Andy Lambert is joining us from ContentCal. Now I'm trying to get everyone's job title right. Director of Growth, but also one of the founders. Quite famously, they have just been bought by Adobe. So as well as Andy sharing today how ContentCal can help you with your new business growth, hopefully he's going to be able to share with us some of the things that he's been doing at ContentCal, and he's got some fantastic tactics that have helped them with their growth and get to the point of sale, which I know lots of you agencies are looking to do. So hello, Andy.
Hello. Thanks for inviting me. Very excited about this.
I honestly, this lineup today, guys, it is the best ever. We are kicking off 2022 in serious style. Next up, we have my newest new business friend on today's webinar, Steve Harlow. So Steve joins us as the Chief Sales Officer at Sopro. Sopro, I guess, do some of the stuff that we also do at Street, but very much focused purely on email prospecting. So Steve has got all the knowledge, tricks on good email languages, cadence, how to do email prospecting really, really well. And Sopro is a great tool that can help you with that. So hello, Steve.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
And last but not least, my mate, Adam. So Adam and I eventually met in 3D a couple of weeks ago, just before I went into hospital to have an operation. So welcome, Adam. Adam is one of the founders of Inflo, which I got the kind of down low on when we met in a bit more detail in terms of how it came about. Maybe that's a separate story, but Inflo is a really fantastic tool. And can I just say, guys, we at Street use, in fact, we're exploring how we're going to start to hopefully use Sopro, but we use ContentCal, we use Inflo, we're very close to Sopro, and we have got clients that have worked with us and Sopro at the same time. So all of these platforms are ones that we actually use and that we know works. I'm talking to people that I know and love, and their platforms are brilliant. So Inflo really helps you kind of not just develop really good content that's going to help you drive inbound. Oh, what was your new strapline, Adam?
It is. Well, hi everyone. Thanks, Katie, for having me. It's create content that converts. So that is the latest addition to the tagline bank.
I love it.
Yeah, I hope that resonates. Yeah.
Content that converts. So
Yeah.
there we go. I'm going straight into the conversation with Adam because I think it's a really great place to start. Anyone who has come to these webinars before and hears me talk about new business knows that I'm all about solving, not selling, and developing helpful strategic content that is going to solve a problem that is keeping your prospect up at night. And I think actually for us, Inflo really, really helps us and enables us to do that. It's got some really clever AI and other things going on within the platform that enables you to understand more about your audience, what they're looking for, what they're searching for, and set a content strategy that's going to work, but also helps you develop winning content that's SEO friendly and is going to drive that inbound. So to kick things off, because I think both ContentCal and Sopro are tools that help us reach our audience and plan all of this. Can you talk us a little bit through some of the kind of rules that you have in place, Adam, for creating that really helpful content that converts?
Yeah, sure. So thanks again for the lovely intro there, Katie, and the team for putting this together. Just so everyone knows what Inflo is, it's a content automation platform. So as I just mentioned, we help you create content that converts. So been doing this since 2016 now, kind of full head of hair later, as you can see. But the point of Inflo is to really simplify the content writing process and make it easy. So we're building software for 6 years now, which has been an interesting journey. So kind of two key benefits of it. One is always the case for busy marketers, busy agencies is freeing up time. So important. Only so many hours in a day. Freeing up time is absolutely essential. And the second thing is SEO. You know, ranking organically on Google is so important. You know, the best place to hide a dead body, unfortunately. A bit of a somber start to this is on the second page of Google. But so we really help you build a content process that works. So the first thing is, you know, getting into, even before I explain how we do that, I think it's worth touching on, you know, why do this from an agency perspective, from a new biz perspective, which I'm sure Andy and Steve will elaborate on. So obviously content is absolutely vital to your kind of go-to-market strategy. It's kind of the kind of linchpin and the fuel to any kind of inbound system, Katie, as you know. It can, you know, obviously can be used in so many ways. So getting your content strategy right is really important. So a few tips, you know, how we can suggest you do that. The first thing is, you know, before you dive into any tech whatsoever, a bit of advice is ask yourself a few questions, which sound really simple, but before you go diving into the first content piece, what services do you offer? That's really important. So know your services. What is it that you offer? The second thing is then, you know, what is unique about what you do compared to others? Who is your kind of target market? And what do you sell? And start really small. So often when I speak to agencies, and agencies who have, you know, clients across different sectors, I tend to find they're so keen to like dive into creating your content, but actually stopping, asking some key questions first is really important. So the first thing is, as I say, is defining those kind of key topics and content pillars. So that'd be the first place to start.
And I guess, you know, from my point of view, just to kind of echo everything that you're saying, Adam, and I can see you nodding away as well there, Andy, is, you know, if you don't get that bit right, if you don't understand who you're for, and by the way, sorry, just pre-warning, I can hear how loud my dog is snoring. I don't have a man or someone dodgy lying on the floor making that noise. It is a dog. But I think from my point of view, if you haven't understood who your audience are, or who the audience that are most likely to buy from you are, and what their needs are, the whole thing falls flat on its face. You absolutely have to create content that is answering a problem that your audience have, and you've got to make sure that you're talking to the right audience. So, you know, way before you've even, you know, started to kind of look at the content pieces, you also need to have understood who those personas are and the different kind of problems that those different personas may well have, because once you've got that really giving content, and hopefully you're then getting it onto your website or onto a platform, that's going to start to drive inbound, and you're going to see good results if you're running it, especially if you're running it through a platform like Inflo. But the other two fabulous people that I have with us today, I'm sure you've got comments on this, guys, but you also can then drive that content out to your audience. So Andy, should we come to you first? How, from a ContentCal point of view, what kind of tips do you have when you're kind of looking at planning that content?
Yes, so I definitely echo what Adam said there. And just to add to that as well, just always think story first. So what's the overarching, once you've understood all of the nuances of the audience, who you're trying to target, the products that you offer, etc., understand the story that knits all that together. Because if we think story first, that precedes any channel distribution, because quite often, especially in B2B marketing, people obsess over channels like, oh, I need to be on TikTok or Insta stories or whatever. None of that matters unless you get your story right. So always think story first, which really is just a nice way of thinking about your content strategy as a broader perspective. But then when it comes on to like the distribution piece, that's when there is incredible opportunity at the moment, as we all know, right? And there are tools out there, ContentCal being one of those, to take that content that you've created, the content that's about solving customer problems that you've already alluded to, Katie, and then distributing that across multiple platforms at the same time. Now, there are some platforms where your reach is absolutely lower than it used to be, right? Facebook for one of those, not saying it shouldn't be on Facebook at all, but, as an example, Facebook doesn't deliver the reach. Hello, doggy. So he's woken up then. Yeah, so like you got Facebook like that, which is more legacy, and it's harder to drive that reach unless you have a following already. But then you've got newer platforms, for example, platforms that are very generous in organic reach, TikTok being a core one of those, as we know, but LinkedIn also is incredibly generous with organic reach at the moment. So thinking about your platform mix, and I always like to think about it from a perspective of having a core platform that you focus on, that you absolutely major on. When we're thinking social media, that is, of course, your blog and SEO value is a key part of what Adam's already mentioned, but thinking about it from a social media lens, thinking about having a core platform that you focus on, that you're all in on, LinkedIn, for example, having other platforms that you distribute to ensure that you maximize the awareness of your message. So if you created a good piece of content, a webinar, for example, you want to maximize distribution. It's about reach. That really is the key thing about social media. Top of the funnel, trying to drive as much awareness of what you're trying to do as possible. And then having that kind of 20% of time, I would always say, focused on things that you're experimenting with, seeing if you can start something on YouTube Shorts or start to move to TikTok, always having a little bit of experimentation going on, just so you can establish new platforms. Because when you jump on new platform trends, whether it's Twitter audio spaces or others I've mentioned, you get an opportunity of getting boosted by the fact that the platforms are trying to promote use of that feature, and as a result will reward creators of content to that particular format. So tools like ContentCal help you kind of put all of this together in a calendar and ultimately distribute that for you, so that you've created a good solid strategy. Now you can think about how that strategy knits together across your different content themes. Adam's already touched on that, the fact that these are kind of overarching topics that link all of your strategies together, whether it's kind of news or innovation, best practice, those kind of themes. Structure that in a calendar and have that automatically distributed. So that's like in a nutshell what ContentCal is all about. But when it comes to kind of like more like dedicated how you'd use ContentCal for new business generation, we're much more kind of top of the funnel. It's all about content, where if you're looking to drive like immediate short-term results, that's when your man Steve needs to come into it, I think.
I love it. Andy, look at that. You're segueing this webinar forward. I don't need to do anything. I picked Tower up, one, because everyone loves a dog, right? And most of you have probably seen my other dog, but not this. This is my old one. He's like 15 years old. There we go. But he, if I pick him up, he's awake, and therefore he's not snoring as loud. So I'm not going to be quite as annoying for anyone listening to this. So Steve, I'm totally in with you, Andy. There's loads I want to map in on, but I'm going to come back to you all on with some questions in a bit. And as I say, guys, if you've got anything that's on your mind, please do submit it in the Q&A. So Steve, of course, what Andy's enabling us to do with ContentCal and how we use it is, you're, like you say, you're getting that distribution, you're driving your reach, and you're pulling people into the top of the funnel. You guys are kind of doing that in a different way, but in often a way that, like you say, you can be a little bit pointy and push that content. So you've created some great content, you're pushing it out on social, you're now able to push it out on email. So can you talk to us about how any tips that you guys have got for really developing really strong outreach and getting those results a bit more quickly?
Sure. I think the first point to allude to is the difference between the types of email marketing that exist. We're all familiar with the HTML designed, slightly more content-based email marketing, which is absolutely vital to display your expertise in the industry, keep people abreast of the updates of your business or stories or things that are going to hook them in. And then the other side is what we specialize in, which is more the sales outreach type of email. And if you think about anyone that does sales in a business, whether that's the director, CEO, or a dedicated sales team, if you look at the hours of their week, the most or the maximum they can do, let's say 40 hours, if you can get as much of that spent pitching people, pitch is probably not the best word, but talking to potential new businesses about how you can help them, that's best. And then they can follow up and go through the proposal and then bring on new clients. If you have them also spending their time generating their own leads, then of course they make like 80% of their time out. So more and more these days, you have the outbound SDR or BDR type activity being run by marketing. And that's really where we come in, which is the one-to-one feel emails going out to your target markets. You're saying about being a bit pointy. You can say, I want to target these types of businesses and I want to speak to these types of people within them, whether that's the owner, head of marketing, or variety of roles. And then you can make it seem as though someone in your team has gone out to them directly to introduce the business and then potentially look to have a conversation with them. And there's several steps you take to that, from finding the right people, curating your email, doing the follow-ups, but then you can weave in some of this content. If you haven't maybe had a response from somebody yet, you can offer a white paper or something else you put together, and still knock on the door to say you want to have a conversation. But if you've got great content that you're feeding out through other channels, you can utilize it in your sales outreach. So yeah, plenty of tips I can share. I don't know how many you want in one go. But no,
it's so true. And that's, do you know what, the biggest thing or mistake that I've seen agencies often make when they're looking at doing new business, and I do see it a lot less now actually. Bauer's obviously very interested in this comment, is that they think that they need to do that designed email piece, and actually you get worse results by sending to unengaged prospects when you're looking to get that reach via email, unless they're already incredibly engaged with you. So for instance, something that we're going to look at doing this year is more kind of newsletter design style things for the people that have been heavily engaged with our webinars and our content over the last 2-3 years. But most of our outreach will still be plain text email that comes. And I do still actually write a lot, or I'm involved with the writing of a lot of the emails, so don't worry, it is me. But a lot of the time, what Steve's saying is when you're doing those kind of more prospecting emails, that they're coming from a person, you get much better engagement if it feels personal and it feels like it's coming from a person than you do if you're trying to send from a business and it just looks like another marketing email, because it doesn't look like that. Yeah, doesn't look like you care as much.
Yeah, I mean, like, just to give you some real statistics for us, because yeah, Steve's definitely talking my language here, because we still send marketing emails through HubSpot. We've got a database of about 100,000 people. We get on average about 19% open rate and 4% click-through rate. That's on our kind of marketing designed, fully glitzy emails, which are a necessary part, as Steve's already alluded to, for content promotion. And then we have the more one-to-one stuff, which is people that have inquired or have taken a trial, etc., which is never sent through HubSpot. This is all kind of personal email that looks like it's direct. It's automated, of course it is, but you know how it works. So yeah, it doesn't look like it's automated, which is the key thing. And open rates are 48%, so over double. So it's just an absolute no-brainer. So I just thought I'd add some data to prove Steve's point.
I love that. And if you want to do this at scale, I do actually believe you have to have both, by the way. But if you only have the time to trial one, I would definitely be focusing on, the prospecting personal emails. Don't wait. And one, it's easier to do, right? You just need to write it and then get a email marketing automation tool to send it out to and get the data. I mean, I'm making it sound super easy, but it's much easier than spending a lot of time designing a really fancy, beautiful email, because I can promise you now, you will get better results by developing and sending those much more personal looking and much easier to create emails. They do get we have exactly the same. And in fact, we're doing some insights into our open rates and sends. I mean, often we're sending to thousands. And of course, when you've got an engaged data set, your open rates are going to be much, much better. When I'm sending to people that have previously attended these webinars, of course, I get much better open rates than to sending it to people that have never attended a webinar, for instance. But always when you're sending plain text emails, they just come across and they look, like I say, they look like they've come from a person with a normal, lovely little email footer, like I would have sending my normal email signature. It just looks exactly like it's an email coming from me. Steve, any other tips on one of the things that I'm very keen to know is any tips on language? I always say to my team, talk like you're talking to a friend. And we run email campaigns quite a lot for our clients. It's one of the big, in fact, it's our campaign success managers. I'm sure there's lots of them on here. Hello. That is the key thing that they're doing a lot of the time. It's creating those campaign emails. So I'm very much all about keeping it really personal, keeping it really friendly, using some clever kind of EQ, so emotional intelligence in there to bring people in and make it feel personal. But have you got any top tips on that?
Sure. I mean, we get in the mindset, we call it personal on a train, which is, imagine you've got someone who does sales on their way to a meeting, 10 minutes away from the destination station, and comes across somebody they think, I think we can help that business, and wants to write them a quick note. So it's going to be fairly brief. It's not going to be highly polished. And it's going to feel like you have or written to them directly on a one-to-one basis. Statistically, we've figured out that about 150 words is about the right length of an email. You want it to have no unnecessary gumph in there. If you've got terms that don't really add any value to that email, then strip them out. If you're describing your service or your offering in a way that might be more akin to a website description, make sure that people are going to understand what it is you are trying to speak to them about. So you need to use the very, very simple language. You're right in terms of making it feel like you're talking to a friend. You're not trying to overly sell to a friend. You're saying, oh, by the way, yeah, we do this and it helps in this area. And they might go, oh, yeah, that sounds interesting. Exactly the same style approach. So keep it short, have a clear call to action of what you want to do next. And yeah, just be don't be devoid of all personality. Don't be afraid to have any sort of humor in there. Have a small icebreaker, refer to the day of the week or whatever you can do, because yeah, I mean, if it's just a real straight to business email with bullet points, which I've never used bullet points, it's easy to skip over it because you just think, well, I'll just delete that. So keep it as personal as you can.
Love that. And that's the other thing that I always kind of say is why are you sending this? How is it going to help the person that you're sending it to? If it doesn't help them, don't send it.
Yeah.
You've got to think about what you're giving away. And that's, again, going back to my kind of solving, not selling piece. If you're not helping solve a problem that you think they might have, don't send it. And and you may have a different approach to this actually, Steve. So that's why we kind of have these three different content pillars that we think are really important when you're doing email campaigns, and this is a kind of mixture of email marketing campaigns and email prospecting campaigns, that you need those insights pieces that are very giving. Sorry, he's so loud. As the older he gets, the louder he is. You need those insights pieces which are answering a problem that show that you're a thought leader, that it might be a written article, it might be an invitation to a webinar, it might be a link to a podcast, it might be a report or a white paper, whatever it is. There's that insightful piece of content that's going to help them solve a problem that they have. There's then what I call like a prove it piece. So that often is a case study or something saying, that thing I sent you before, this is how we do that, or how we've solved that problem for someone else, and proving that you know how to solve that problem, not that you can just talk about that problem. Oh my God, he's so loud. And the last one is making it really easy for people to buy you. So, okay, and then so how can I get that from you? So as a buyer, you want to go, okay, cool, I'd love to explore how we could do that, so that you've got some kind of gateway product or something that people can buy, or a workshop or something that makes it really easy for them to go, actually, that's how I'm going to be able to do that, solve that problem for my business, and you're showing me how easy it is for me to buy that from you. So if you haven't got those 3 pieces of content, I would say they're really, really important, and definitely driving those out through email in that order is going to help you. That's my view. Steve, you definitely do a lot more of this email marketing and email prospecting than I do. Anything else that I've missed there?
Well, we look at segmenting the outreach a little bit more on the person in the business who you're going to help. So I'll use us as an example, because we've grown using our own service, and if we're approaching somebody who heads up marketing, the benefit is that they're going to feed more leads into the sales team. You're approaching somebody who heads up sales, and of course they will be receiving more leads, they can close more. And if you're going to a director owner, you're helping to increase the size of their business, hopefully, and promote that growth. But with the information you send in an email, we find you've got to balance it a little bit, because ultimately, if you are giving people links to go check stuff out, you are directing them away from that email, and ultimately you want to get a reply, so they will have to come back. So we tend to avoid giving too much in terms of check this out in the initial intro. It would probably be more the 3rd and 4th email in the sequence, and the 4th one tends to be the final, I'm not going to keep pestering you type of approach. So if you've got relevant case studies, it's good. But the other option is to say that you have them and you want to tell them more about it, and use that as a way to promote a response. So then you can get on a conversation, because your email is to move to the next medium, which will be brilliant if it's a face-to-face meeting that we all want to have return. But if not, something like a Zoom call is the next best thing. If you can't do it, a phone call. But we personally try and do all our demonstrations over a video call. That's one good thing to come out the last couple of years. Everyone's familiar with it now. But yeah, you're moving from email to a verbal conversation. So the quicker you can do that, the better.
So
I think the general kind of rule, as I'm interested in your take on this, would just be, you just make it about the person you're sending it to, because as soon as you start putting words of like, we offer this, or we are the X, it's immediately a turn off, right? Well, that's the way I see it anyway. Because fundamentally, you've then gone to the lowest common denominator of just talking about yourself. It feels that's a lack of creativity. The best way of approaching it. I mean, I love how clear you are about who you target and the problems you solve, right? You just articulated that in like 30 seconds or less. The marketing, the sales team, or the CEO of the company. I think that's a really good example for people on this call to take, to go, know your audience, understand exactly the problem you solve for those target personas. Don't go too broad, be super focused with it, because then you can just easily make the conversation about that person. And I think that really is the core of everything. And it's interesting, because in marketing, we overcomplicate things massively, because usually we're solving something fairly simple, because people can't really understand complex projects, right? I'm not being overly simplistic, but generally as human beings, we try and simplify things as much as we can. And there are only a few key drivers that we're trying to solve for someone. So as soon as we just nail that on for the people we're trying to serve, everything, like whether it's email, whether it's social, whether it's blog content, everything becomes so much simpler. And sometimes simple is hard, and it just takes that time. Adam mentioned this right at the start. Just write that down. Who absolutely do we serve? And importantly, who do we not serve? And that was a critical thing for us in the early days, because, you know, a tool like us is applicable for anyone. And we made it a very conscious decision to say, no, we're not for everyone, we're for these people. And that can change over time, but being super focused is core to growth as far as I'm concerned. That was a long ramble. That felt like I was on my soapbox. Does that make sense, Steve? Are you
yeah? No, I fully agree with that. You can't, like, you could write a long email talking about everything your business has achieved. Let's say it's of no interest to that person. All they care about is, well, you've contacted me. Why would I be interested in what you do? So it is about, you could talk about stuff maybe you've achieved for like-minded businesses or similar businesses to say, okay, they've got pedigree.
Yeah,
but it's really just trying to simplify the problem you solve, or the benefit you provide, and see whether that's on their agenda currently to have that conversation.
Gotcha. Yeah, definitely still agree with the importance of social proof, though. Definitely.
Yeah,
that's a critical part in decision making for sure.
Yeah, and you've got to make sure that you've mapped all those. I mean, there's so much. There's a fantastic report, actually, Steve, I'm plugging it for you, that Sopro have put together. So if you're interested in email marketing, Maisie, who's in the background somewhere here, who helps with our marketing at Street, could you post the link to the Sopro report? Because if you want to have some ideas and things that you can trial in your email and actually have some really good stats, it even tells you days of the week and times of day, etc., that you should be leading your outreach. There's some awesome insights that will really help you kind of put your strategy together on that. So going back to strategy, Adam, I'm going to come to you. I can see there is a question as well, which I'll have a look at in a second whilst you're answering the question that I'm going to put to you first. But we've been talking a lot about how to develop that strategic content. Is there anything in specific that you think is really important? I mean, I'm all about the personas in the audience, and how do people get started?
Yeah, I think it comes down to, first thing is having those content pillars. So again, goes back to, what do you do, who do you do it for, problem you're solving, etc. Target market, obviously so key. Know your competitors. So the first thing is implementing that content strategy. So having those defined pillars in place is so important. Start with one or two. Don't rush to 5-10 topics. That's so important. Once you've got that in place, the hard part, I guess, almost starts as well, where you've then got to actually have some kind of internal process to go from, this is my strategy, this is my topic, this is what I'm going to be talking about for who, to actually delivering consistently. So the next challenge, I guess, when it comes to content, even kind of before the distribution phase, I would say is, what is the process? I'm going to talk on behalf more on the kind of long form stuff. This is what I know best. So obviously educational posts, blog posts, kind of reports, etc., articles. Really important to kind of think of it as, again, from topic to actually getting it live, of having a process. So have like a template for a post, for example. That's really important. So to get to consistency, what is your kind of structure? So it could be obviously having a title, what are the kind of rules for a title? Having a target keyword in every single post. That should ideally be in the introduction, should be in a title, should also be in a conclusion. Then it's like set rules. This is also kind of to benefit your SEO as well. Think about how long should your paragraph be, your sentence length, not overusing the passive voice rather than the active voice, having a CTA in the post. So what I'm trying to say is, the minute you have your topic and your content pillars in place, is know that internal process. Because once you have that internal process, you can then be consistent. Then it's a case of getting it out, as Steve is talking about, as Andy is talking about. So the big kind of next piece is having that clear and defined kind of roadmap to launch.
And a consistent tone of voice, I guess, which is, if you want your content to start getting noticed and to resonate, you've got to understand who you are, how you talk, and make sure that is also consistent, as well as the content is helpful and good. And I mean, there's a lot to think about, right, when you're writing.
Yeah, that's it. it's that balance between following the science, I guess, and obviously, as we're talking about being a human being. So, for us in the early days, a lot of our kind of initial beta users, how we actually got them was mainly through actually LinkedIn outreach. So what you were saying there, Steve, about resonating, the first kind of message being so important, that you're absolutely right. What we saw is that first paragraph in a LinkedIn message or in an email, the first sentence is actually so key, and talking about them, where they've been, travel, university, whatever it is, background, rather than yourself. So obviously that then on a kind of on a broader landscape is important in terms of consistency around tone of voice and being personalized, and marrying that with the SEO kind of benefits and removing any guesswork.
Yeah, I'd echo that actually, because Adam and myself been on a very similar journey of founding companies 5 years ago, etc. And growing it initially through LinkedIn outreach or cold email outreach. Exactly. There's nothing more glamorous than that, right? In your early days, that is the key way to win customers. And the only thing I'd add to that is that I had just a few email headers just literally hidden in notes on my Mac. So a few email headers with the first kind of line, and I varied that first line all the time. And I would just manually note how many positive responses I got to each variation of that. It's basically just budget split testing, but it's just being data driven from the earliest stages, because a lot of people just go, I've chucked out some emails, no one's getting back to me. But really, did you try hard enough is usually my question. Did you think about it more deeply enough? Because there are so many variables when it comes to email. Just having a lot of different versions, targeting different people, and measure that as much as you can. You don't need special tools to measure it, just an Excel sheet will do. And that would be a key part, because all we're trying to do is find those kind of emotional trigger points that help someone go, oh, that sounds like a bit of me, and I'll respond. So yeah, definitely a bit of testing is what I'd advocate heavily at this stage.
I think that applies to most channels. If you're not measuring the activity for any of your channels, you cannot learn from it, you can't optimize it. And ultimately, you want to track your pound spent, money back in, and if you haven't made a note of every little facet of what you're doing, then you're not going to be able to get the most out of it, and you can't identify your mistakes if you can't see what's working and what's not. So tracking on all channels, and we've got a reporting suite that goes into a huge amount of detail on the prospecting side, which is one of our key advantages. We can make, if you think about 21% changes, that's achievable. 20% change is a lot harder. So it's all about looking at the little details.
Yeah. And you've got to implement that from word go, because you need to know, are the subjects that I'm not talking about right, or is it just the emails aren't landing correctly because the language that I'm using, or the title subjects aren't, there's so much. You've got to have a good title that what makes people want to open the email. You've potentially got to have some good content that you're pushing out, and you've also got to have lovely language that encourages people to click through or to book a meeting or take action. So there's a lot that you need to do here. So definitely split testing, and that really is one of the massive benefits about using platforms like HubSpot, like Coolio, Sopro. Sorry, he's so loud, I don't know what's going on. Right, I do have some questions. A lot of them, believe it or not, are around email. So Sopro, definitely glad that you're here today. All of the automation is great in terms of time saves. So this is from, Justin. All of the automation is great in terms of time saving and increasing outreach, but there is only a certain amount of personalization that you can introduce. And as these tools are becoming more commonly used, it's becoming much easier to spot these types of emails, especially when you work in sales. Do you also recommend using highly personalized bespoke emails to individual companies in combination with the more automated outreach? Me, I would personally say yes, we really do both of these things, because I feel that's the extra layer that we add on, and we take a more account-based marketing approach. But you've got to invest people and time in that, and if you don't have that, then definitely doing something rather than doing nothing. I mean, be interested to hear what you guys think, but I would say the majority of our growth at Street, and we have grown fairly quickly amidst the pandemic especially, has been down to our email campaigns and producing hopefully good content like today's webinar. But it has been down to sending those emails out, and some of that has to be automated, because I don't have the time or ability to not use automation, it would be impossible. So I would definitely say, if you're going to do something, definitely do some automated emails to get started, but just personalize them as much as you can. Steve, what are your thoughts on the kind of more bespoke outreach?
So it's very much business dependent. There are clients or people that come to us and are interested in our service, but when we investigate further their target market, it's quite focused and quite narrow, in which case I would always recommend more the account-based marketing approach. A blend is good. So you might go, I've got a fairly wide audience, let's go out to them on a slightly more mass scale. I've got my key sector or this key type of business that actually I really want to win more work in. And for those ones, you might go more account-based. If I use us as an example, we can work really, bar them having a particularly niche market, anyone in the B2B sector and pretty much globally. So we've got the very definition of a huge potential audience. But if we are looking to continue to grow our larger scale clients, which we've won a number of them over the years, but more by chance rather than focusing on them, then for those, I will be recommending we go more down the very personalized route. You can look at, there's corporate gifting platforms out there where you could send gift cards for sort of coffee, Amazon, or things like that. So in terms, just on the personalizing your mass emails, yes, there's lots of automation out there to run that for you. One of the steps that we take to try and combat it looking like it's run through automation is if we've got our raw data, which would be person's name, the industry they're in, normally as the industry is written on LinkedIn, the company name, you've got the company size, which is normally in number form 11 to 50. We have a process we call it informalization, which I'm pretty sure it's a word we made up, but it takes all that raw data and we go, right, how will that sit in an email? And we manually go through each one, we clean them up, we'll shorten company names where it makes sense. And when we're weaving them into a sentence as well, we try and make it seem very natural. And that helps it look like it is more on a one-to-one basis. And I think what Katie's saying, there is only a certain amount of time you can spend writing these. So where you can automate it, do it. But yes, we can spot the poor quality automated emails, but actually you're probably not noticing some of the better quality ones. It's a bit like CGI on films. When it's terrible, it's there, but there's scenes where you have no idea there's loads in there. It's just been done well.
Yeah, and that's so true. So, sorry, Andy, you go first.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, I definitely agree with that. I think another thing to add to it is just a process of phasing, right? Because in your early days, unless you've got an email that or a series of emails that gets results, going back to the point we said earlier, like testing at a smaller batch of people, getting the message absolutely nailed on, and then using top performing emails then for automation is the move that we took to scale our business. Initially, it was all very personalized outreach because it was worth the time to truly understand the customer drivers. And then once you truly understand that, you've got it nailed on, automation is good. Also want to pick up on the point of corporate gifting as well. Super powerful thing. If you've ever read the book called Persuasion, it's an incredible book. One of the 9 powers of persuasion is called Reciprocity. People are much more likely to respond in kind if you give first. So if, going back to the point of like trying to make it about someone, nothing makes it more about someone saying, hey, I've just bought you a coffee, and that, like a simple platform like Hug, which is at HU double G or 3 Gs, I don't know, something like that, but search that. It's like $2 for a coffee. And then, it costs nothing. So I think it's a really smart thing to bring up, Steve.
That is one of the tactics that we love, by the way, especially when we're trying to get people to come to a virtual roundtable, for instance. So we will pre-commit. There's loads out there, like you say, Hug's a great one, but there's various other ones. I can't remember the different ones we've used now. We're just actually exploring something which is really simple that all of us could do with Uber, because Uber have now got this platform that enables you to do all of this, which is the app to a certain extent, but it enables you can send, so if we've got an event, we can organize cars, or if we're doing a virtual event, we can say, claim we've got given you £10 credit, you can buy it from your favorite coffee shop locally, or Starbucks or whatever you want, here's your £10, and it runs out at a specific time, so if they don't claim it. But you're much more likely to get people to attend, and they're going to feel really guilty if they don't, if you've given them something. That reciprocity piece is so important, especially when you're trying to get people in. The same goes for, you know, when we were hosting events in person, we would get people to pre-select their food, so that then if they didn't turn up, they felt really bad because they'd chosen their food and potentially we'd spent money on it. So they're much more likely to actually show up, and if they don't show up, they're much more likely to want to have a one-to-one meeting with you because they've let you down. So yeah, there's some real science behind that, which I love. Now I am going to try and get through some of these questions, and there is quite a few around the outreach side of things. One that's come up a couple of times, and I think it's kind of in the same vein here, but how do you use cold outreach email in recent years with the GDPR rules, which have all changed, and we don't even have to be GDPR compliant now, although I think most of us are still. It was my understanding that you could not email somebody unless they have already told you that they would like to be contacted. Now, this is different, and you're going to probably know even more about this than I do, Steve, if you work in the B2B space, because there is legitimate interest, because it's B2B. If you're not a B2C, and none of us probably on this call, unless there are some brands that have sneaked in, and hello if you are, but yeah, most of the time when it's B2B, there's legitimate interest, so you are allowed to get their email and you are allowed to email them. So the GDPR rules kind of cover us. I think it's changed because we're now not part of, I don't know, there's a new rule, isn't there, Steve? I'm probably not scratching it as much as I should be. Well,
because we're not part of the EU anymore, we have UK GDPR, which is very much a replication of it. It might be a bit of a danger for me to oversimplify the compliance side of it, but you're correct in the fact that the reason you are processing that email address, or why you have it, is legitimate interest. On a B2B basis, that is an exemption you can use. The actual rules about sending an email is the e-privacy rules, which is where a lot of people get muddled up. Now, they are in the UK absolutely fine. You can send B2B marketing on a one-to-one basis, or even on a many-to-one basis, as long as it's designed for that person, they can opt out. They are applied differently around various areas of Europe, but the one thing which I would caveat for the whole of it is, if you look around anywhere around the world where there are varying email marketing laws, we have yet to see a single case of any regulator doing anything about a B2B email. It's just not really in their interest, because ultimately data protection is to protect the individual from their personal data, and their business email, although it is personal data, it doesn't really pose a risk to them and their security. So UK-wide, it's absolutely fine to send cold emails.
Yes, and most of the platforms, you know, that we use, certainly I'm sure Sopro, are all set up to be GDPR compliant. So we're all, and the data that we use is all GDPR compliant. So it's all very safe. So yeah, if you're using, you know, some of the data platforms that we use, so outside of Sopro, you know, there's various different platforms like prospect.io, hunter.io, which I think you can still get some stuff for free. We use another one called Apollo. If you're looking specifically for marketing data, Alf Insights and Winmo are fantastic platforms that also give you a lot more than just the data for the contact data. They also give you, in fact, Winmo is layered in with another platform that I love called Crystal Knows, that actually gives you information on their personality and how they like to be spoken to. So it will even give you insights on how to reach out, as well as what's going on within the business. Sorry, I do not know what is going on with this pug. He's having a moment. Can you hear him? Anyway, so there's lots out there, and don't worry too much about the GDPR compliance. As long as you're following the overarching rules and using the right platforms, then you should be safe. So Ian has asked, could Andy recommend a personal automation platform for emails if he's using HubSpot for newsletter and impersonal mail?
Yeah, it's HubSpot again. It's an extra feature you needed to buy, which is called Sales Starter, which allows you to run sequences that are personalized and that are sent as just simple rich text emails. So very different to the marketing emails. So that's what we use. We built a whole business on HubSpot. It gets expensive at our scale, though, I will warn you.
It does. Yeah, we use HubSpot as well. In fact, we've just migrated over from Coolia, but of course you can also use Sopro, guys. So that's
Steve. Sorry.
So no, there's so many, and you've got to investigate which, dependent on your budget and your experience, you can get started small and build up, which is exactly what we did at Street. When I started doing this, we didn't have the marketing budget that we have today. We've moved to HubSpot now because it makes our lives easier in terms of we have full visibility across the board, and this is something that we do at scale, and we also do it for clients. But before then we used Coolio, which does all the same things. You just have to be a bit smarter about hooking it up using Zapier with all the other platforms, etc. So there's so many out there that you can use, and there are people like Sopro that do a lot more of the legwork for you that make it even easier. So yeah, lots and lots of them out there. So another question is, do you use multi-touch outreach, combining your email campaigns with LinkedIn outreach? I was going to say we haven't talked much about LinkedIn, although we did touch upon it earlier. And if yes, do you automate your LinkedIn outreach too?
I have a view, but I'm sure my co-panelists will have some others. So we actually invested quite a lot into this late last year, and found it delivered the square root of NAFL, simply put. So automating LinkedIn outreach, it seems like the open rate on LinkedIn emails were just abysmal, to be honest. That's our experience, so it might not be everyone else's. We outsourced that all to an organization as well, which I think was probably another mistake. This kind of stuff, which is so inherently personal, for me, should usually live within a business. That's my own personal view. Others might have a different view. But when it comes to LinkedIn, I'll just touch on this very quickly because we haven't touched on it already. The most important thing on LinkedIn is to humanize your brand and to be a personal, and focus on your personal profile on LinkedIn. It's transformed our business. No one cares about LinkedIn company pages. They care about the personal brands. And the more B2B businesses can understand that, because B2Bs are way, way behind when it comes to social media marketing, especially from this perspective. Like I'll give you a couple of examples, one B2B, one consumer example. Take, for example, the business Drift, B2B business, the former CMO, Dave Gerhardt, his personal brand was bigger on LinkedIn than Drift was, which is a brilliant B2B tool, but it's purely because people want to hear from a CMO. So power of personal brand. And also, for any football fans among us, let's take Watford FC. So their goalkeeper, Ben Foster, has 1 million YouTube subscribers. Watford Football Club have 170,000. No one cares about the brand, they care about the person. Goes back to all about humanizing emails. It should transcend everything. So yeah, people don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. Once again, talking about Simon Sinek. All of this stuff, we all know business is inherently human, and for some reason we seem to lose our head when we go into B2B marketing and think that people buy on features. They don't. They buy with emotion and justify with logic. It's exactly the same as it is in our personal lives as it is in business. But for some reason, B2B marketers can't get their heads around it.
It's crazy, isn't it?
Box now.
Yeah, no, Andy, I absolutely like that is the most valuable thing, because it's so true. People think that you need to talk like a business because you're doing B2B marketing. It's so not true. And exactly the same, you're on a much smaller scale. Little old me, I've got 6,000-7,000 followers and connections on LinkedIn. Street agency has 1,500. So obviously we're much smaller than the numbers, but it's the same rules apply. If you look at most, very rare for the bit. I mean, not always. There are some anomalies, and there are businesses that have done very well on branding themselves and faming themselves. People like Accenture, etc. You probably will find, that they are, doing very, very well. But in terms of engagement on content, you're always going to do better if it's coming from a person. And LinkedIn, I would say, it should be every agency's kind of first social platform. So if you're looking at really investing in one, make sure you invest in LinkedIn. To map back to the question as well, and I totally agree. And traditionally I have done lots of LinkedIn inboxing. We've used and trialed LinkedIn email outreach tools and platforms. We've worked with agencies that have already got them in place. You do not get the same results that you get by doing it on email. Now, that's not to say that you don't use LinkedIn. And I know, Steve, you'll have a view on this as well. You can use LinkedIn to help you find the contact details and warm things up. You can be liking stuff. You can be engaging with them. You can start following them. You can start commenting on their posts. You can definitely do all that kind of stuff. And that will help you when you're emailing. So if I was to say how to do those two things together, I would be encouraging you to interact and engage on the platform, not in the inbox. I mean, I've got probably loads of inbox messages in my LinkedIn, which I haven't even read yet, like loads, so many, and most of them I'll just click in and get rid of. But if someone's engaging with and commenting on my post, I will pay attention to that. So focus your energies there, and then via email, and that's how you jointly approach. Don't try and inbox people on LinkedIn. It doesn't work as well as it does work sometimes, but it doesn't work as well as I think if you do it that way.
I'd probably just add to that. I mean, back when we first started, we were actually messaging people on LinkedIn. Their rules change all the time, and we knew that at one point they could change the rules and stop us running our whole service. Right, let's move it to email. We think it's going to be more effective anyway. It turns out it was. But fast forward to today, we're always trialing different things, and we're looking at, if you send a connection request within the email chain, does that help? But actually, if you are thinking about running stuff on a more automated basis, such as email, you then got to think about the cross admin. And if you connect with somebody on LinkedIn and they suddenly message you on LinkedIn, go, oh, thanks, yeah, I got your email. You've then got to remember to go in and stop the emails going out to that person. And you end up with a bit of a logistical nightmare. So actually, we tend to recommend prior, if you want to do, like Katie's saying, soft stuff, comment and like people's content, if you know you're going to be putting them through a sequence. And then once you've had a conversation with somebody, LinkedIn's really useful for the next part of the funnel, from pitch to potentially closing, connecting with people you've spoken to that became part of the sales process. But for direct outreach, it had its day, and it is very much now as Andy's saying, your branding and your content platform to people to recognize you as an influencer and an expert in your industry.
Yeah, use it for that and push content out and engage with content rather than trying to inbox people. Your time will be much, you'll get much more reward back for your time. Now, I'm going to launch the poll in the background. Again, for those of you that haven't joined before, we do this every single month. The data is hopefully going to be useful data for you guys. We do analyze it all. So just whilst we're spending the last 4 minutes hopefully answering some more questions, I'm going to launch the poll in the background, and I will then share it, and we'll share the details once we've done 2 or 3 of these this year, so you've got a bit of data based on what's happening right now. A question that I think is probably going to be best for you, lovely Adam, how often would be best to blog on your website if you're seeking to drive inbound traffic and growth? Is the answer as much as possible, or is there a strategy that people should be using behind it?
Question. It's about quality. Well, to give you like a rough idea, it's probably at least one a week. Ideally, at least 800 words per article, and then titles ideally over 1 sentence, not 2. Paragraphs no longer than 150 words. Sentences no longer than 20 words. But the answer: 1 article per week as a bare minimum. But then try and have different perspectives on that topic, and then build around that. So that would be the best way to do it.
Amazing. Look at that, getting in there quick. Now, I can see that there are some questions in the chat. You naughty people, you didn't listen to me. It's fine, don't worry. And I know some of you, so I am joking. Anna Stone. Hello, Anna. What do you think is the ideal team setup? I love this question. Do you think is the ideal team setup for successful email prospecting? There are a lot of people who can input, but practically, do you recommend a data person, a designer, someone responsible for builds, someone monitoring response? Often there might be one person doing all the roles in a smaller agency, but is that really going to enable you to have success?
I mean, from I have perspectives.
Just use Sopro, guys.
Well, yeah. I mean, we're fully aware of, if you want to replicate what we do, you do have to have expertise in all those areas. I don't think you could pick one over the other, because if you have a great list of people, but then you send them terrible emails, it's a waste. And if you're sending the most beautifully crafted, perfect emails out to a list that's just bouncing, you're going to get nowhere. You need somebody to run your compliance just to make sure you've got a path to where you got the data from. The analysis of it, I personally couldn't pick one of them unless someone else has got further input.
Yeah, no, I'm with you on that. I think you have to, you've got to put the time into this. You really, really have to. There's no shortcuts.
I guess I would add that if you look at where you may have the skill in house, let's say you're better at creating the email, if you know what kind of list you want to build, maybe outsource that, because that could be fairly admin heavy and repetitive. So if you outsource that part, then you can concentrate on using that list to its best capability.
Love it. Joe, I think I've answered your question around different data sources that you can use, but we'll make sure we put that in the follow-up comms, just in case you missed it. Last question, it's another one for you today, Steve. What sort of message would you put in the last email cadence? I think this is a good way to end. I'm sorry, guys, if we do go a minute over, my apologies. But what would be that last email to really get their attention? If you haven't had a response in your cadence of 4 or 5 emails, what would be the last thing that you put out there?
You see a lot of these, but they work. We go humorous. An example would be, the simple, give me one of these points. Are you too busy, or you want me to go away? You want me to follow up in a month? You're interested, but it's just not on the agenda right now. Or I mean, the original one we had was, you're being held captive by a ninja kitten and you need me to send help. And there's a picture of a ninja kitten there, and these things really do work. And we've got a whole library of examples. But the key thing is to have personality, make them aware that you're not going to pester them every week for the end of their life. This is the last time. So if they are interested, let's have that conversation. But yeah, something funny is always a good option.
I love that. That's a great tip. One little extra tip from me, but I prefer the funny one. And I think, guys, we need to start doing more funny emails, is also, but I use this more when you've actually been talking to someone and they've gone missing on you. So slightly different scenario is, have I lost you? Because no one feels like no one wants the word lost. There is a real, oh my God, me breaking my own rules. There is a real, I think it's because the hours ended that I put myself on do not disturb. Sorry if I just deafened everyone. So yeah, so the have I lost you also really, really works, because no one wants to feel like they've lost anyone. And I think the book that you recommended, Andy, will give us lots of tips on the psychologies of sales, and it's one that I know about, which I've never actually read, so thank you for reminding me about that. Guys, we're 1 minute past. I've ended the poll and shared the results. We will be collating it over the next few months. I really hope you've enjoyed today. I have learned lots from our fantastic guests, so a huge thank you to our guests. If you have got questions that you submitted, we will try and go back to you. So guys, whilst you're here, I'm going to get you to commit to, if there are any questions that I haven't asked you, we might be in touch to ask you for an answer to a question that we didn't get to. And we promise to share those with you individually. But otherwise, I really hope you enjoyed today. If you haven't checked out Timber, please do go and check out Timber. All this kind of content is saved onto the platform. There's training content. In fact, there's content from some of our lovely guests, which I know some of them are actually even creating bespoke platform for content for the platform. There's a community group. There's lots going on. So if you enjoy these sessions, do again go and check out Timber, TANBA.io, and we'll also share links to, of course, ContentCal, Sopro, and inflo.AI as well. Thank you so much, guys. It's been amazing. And yeah, enjoy the rest of your Tuesdays, everyone.
Thanks all.
Thanks, guys.
Bye, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.